Dave recognized the futility of logical argument when Karen reached this level of conviction. He'd learned to pick his battles carefully. "What's your plan?" Karen's eyes lit up with the fervor of someone who'd been waiting for this exact question. "Emergency HOA meeting. Tomorrow night, I'm invoking Article 7, Section 3 of our Community Covenant. Emergency sessions for community welfare concerns." Dave knew about Article 7, Section 3. Karen had used it twice before, once to address the mounting threat of unauthorized lawn ornaments, and once to discuss the dangerous precedent of non-regulation mailbox colors. Both meetings had been sparsely attended disasters that had somehow strengthened Karen's resolve rather than deterring her. "Karen, are you sure this is the hill you want to die on?" She turned back to her laptop, her fingers already flying across the keys as she crafted the meeting notice. "Dave, someone has to protect the integrity of our community. If we don't enforce standards consistently, we'll end up living in chaos." The next morning, Karen's emergency meeting notification appeared in every HOA member's inbox at precisely 6 a.m., accompanied by a 17-point agenda that began with unauthorized resource appropriation and ended with community standards in crisis, a call to action. Mike Henderson read the email while drinking his morning coffee on his newly filled pool deck. He'd been expecting something like this from the moment he'd noticed Karen photographing his house from various angles around the neighborhood. Mike had lived next to Karen long enough to recognize the early warning signs of her escalating involvement in his personal business. What Mike didn't know was that Karen had spent the previous evening discovering something that would transform her pool water crusade into something much more serious. Mike Henderson wasn't just a neighbor with a pool. According to her internet research, he was a city water department employee. The emergency HOA meeting convened in the community center at 7 p.m. sharp, with Karen standing behind a makeshift podium constructed from a folding table and a cardboard box. She prepared a PowerPoint presentation titled "Aquatic Resource Misappropriation, a Community Crisis," and had printed enough handouts for the entire neighborhood. 7 people showed up. But Karen Whitmore had never been deterred by small audiences. If anything, the intimate setting would allow for more detailed discussion of her findings. "Fellow residents," she began, clicking to her first slide, which featured a dramatic close-up of Mike's empty pool from that morning. "We are here tonight because the very foundation of our community standards is under attack." Mrs. Patterson, who attended every HOA meeting primarily for the social interaction, raised her hand. "Karen, dear, didn't Mike just get his pool filled? I saw the truck yesterday." "Exactly, Mrs. Patterson. But this wasn't just any truck. This was a coordinated operation involving municipal resources, fire department infrastructure, and what I've discovered through extensive research to be a potential conflict of interest that strikes at the heart of our local government." Karen clicked to her next slide, a screenshot of the city water department's website with Mike Henderson's name highlighted in yellow marker on the staff directory. "Mike Henderson isn't just our neighbor. He's a city water department employee with access to insider information about municipal resources, usage rates, and infrastructure access. This pool filling operation wasn't just a residential transaction. It was an abuse of public trust." The room grew quiet as the residents processed this information. Even Dave, who'd attended solely to provide moral support and damage control, found himself leaning forward with interest. Bob Martins, who served as HOA treasurer and generally tried to stay neutral in Karen's various campaigns, cleared his throat. "Karen, are you suggesting that Mike used his city position to get some kind of special deal on pool water?" "I'm suggesting that the appearance of impropriety is sufficient grounds for investigation. Whether Mike received preferential treatment, insider access, or special rates is something that needs to be determined by proper authorities." Karen clicked through slides showing the water truck, the fire hydrant connection, timestamps of the operation, and a comparison chart of residential versus commercial water rates. Her presentation was thorough, well-organized, and surprisingly compelling. What Karen didn't know was that Mike Henderson had decided to attend the meeting. He slipped into the back of the room during Karen's explanation of municipal water infrastructure, wearing a bemused expression that suggested he was watching a performance rather than participating in a community crisis. When Karen reached her computing slide, recommended actions for community protection, Mike raised his hand. "I'd like to respond to these allegations." The room turned to stare at him. Karen's presentation had been so comprehensive, so detailed, and so convincing that several residents had begun nodding along with her conclusions. Mike's sudden appearance felt like a plot twist in a television drama. "The floor recognizes Mr. Henderson," Karen said formally, though her voice carried an edge of uncertainty. Mike stood up, still holding his coffee mug from home. "First, Karen, I have to say this is the most thorough investigation into pool maintenance that I've ever witnessed. You've documented my water usage better than my city department does." A few residents chuckled, but Karen remained stone-faced. "Second, you're absolutely right that I work for the city water department. I'm a maintenance supervisor for the North District, which means I spend most of my time fixing broken pipes and water main leaks. What you may not know is that every city employee gets a 15% discount on municipal services, including water delivery for large usage like pools. It's in our union contract, it's completely legal, and it's been policy for 12 years. Karen's left eye began its familiar twitch. "Third, I used Aquafill because my pool developed a crack last month during that freeze, and I had to drain it completely for repairs. The city actually recommends using licensed water delivery services for large refills because it's more efficient than running a garden hose for 6 hours straight." Mike paused, took a sip of his coffee, and smiled at Karen with what appeared to be genuine appreciation. "But I have to admit, Karen, your research skills are impressive. You found information about municipal water policies that I didn't even know existed. Have you ever considered applying for a position with the city? We could use someone with your attention to detail." The room erupted in surprised laughter, but Karen remained frozen at her podium, her carefully constructed case crumbling around her. Every fact in her presentation was accurate, but the interpretation she built upon those facts was completely wrong. Dave stood up from his seat. "Well, this has been educational. I think we can consider this matter resolved." But as the residents began filing out, chatting amicably and shaking Mike's hand, Karen remained at her podium, staring at her PowerPoint slides. She'd been so close to exposing something significant, so close to protecting her community from what she'd been certain was a serious threat. Mike approached her as she packed up her materials. "Karen, I meant what I said about the job offer. The city needs people who ask tough questions and pay attention to details. You'd be good at investigating actual problems." Karen looked up at him, her expression unreadable. "Thank you for clarifying everything tonight." But as Mike walked away, Karen made a mental note to research city employee benefit policies more thoroughly. Because while tonight's mystery had been solved, she couldn't shake the feeling that there were other inconsistencies in the neighborhood that warranted investigation. After all, if Mike got a 15% discount on city services, what other undisclosed advantages might other residents be hiding? Karen Whitmore's crusade was far from over. Karen Whitmore pressed her face against her kitchen window, so hard that her cheek left a greasy smudge on the glass. Across the fence, her neighbor's pool sat completely empty, its bright blue bottom gleaming in the morning sun like a giant ceramic bowl. But what made her blood pressure spike wasn't just the empty pool. It was the massive water truck parked in Mike Henderson's driveway, its hose snaking across his lawn like some sort of municipal vampire. "He's stealing city water," she shrieked to no one in particular, her coffee mug trembling in her grip. Karen had been the self-appointed guardian of Pinewood Estates for 3 years, ever since she'd moved in and discovered that the HOA board was woefully incompetent at maintaining community standards. She'd made it her personal mission to document every violation, from Mrs. Chen's slightly overgrown hedges to the Martinez family's unauthorized garden gnome. But this was theft on an industrial scale. She grabbed her phone and dialed 911 with the urgency of someone reporting an armed robbery. 911, what's your emergency? "This is Karen Whitmore at 1247 Maple Grove Lane, and I need to report a theft in progress. My neighbor is stealing water." thousands of gallons. The dispatcher's voice carried a barely concealed sigh. Ma'am, is this a water main break or? No, he's got a truck pumping water directly into his pool. This is municipal theft. Ma'am, if he's hired a water delivery service, that's not theft. That's a business transaction. Karen's left eye began its familiar stress twitch. But where is that water coming from? The city reservoirs. He's essentially stealing from every taxpayer in this municipality. After 5 more minutes of circular logic that would have impressed a philosophy professor, Karen hung up in disgust. The dispatcher had promised to look into it, which Karen correctly interpreted as bureaucratic speak for file this under crazy neighbor complaints. But Karen Whitmore hadn't become the unofficial sheriff of Pinewood Estates by accepting defeat. She marched to her home office, formerly the guest bedroom, until she'd converted it into a surveillance command center, complete with telephoto lens camera, filing cabinets full of violation reports, and a detailed map of the neighborhood, marked with color-coded pins indicating various infractions. She pulled out her leather-bound incident report notebook and began documenting everything. The time, 9:47 a.m. The weather conditions, partly cloudy, perfect for covert photography, and the suspect's blatant disregard for community resource conservation. Her pen scratched furiously across the page as she crafted what she was certain would become evidence in what the local news would surely call the Great Pool Water Heist of Pinewood Estates. Through her telephoto lens, she watched Mike Henderson emerge from his house in swim trunks, stretching and yawning like a man without a care in the world. The audacity! Here he was, preparing to enjoy his ill-gotten aquatic gains, while honest citizens like herself were conserving water by taking shorter showers and letting their lawns achieve a more natural brown hue. Karen's strategic mind was already 3 moves ahead. If the police wouldn't act, she'd escalate to the city water department. If they failed her, she'd contact the mayor's office. And if all else failed, she had her secret weapon: the emergency HOA meeting provision that allowed any board member to call an urgent session with just 24 hours notice. Karen spent the next 2 hours conducting what she termed preliminary reconnaissance. Armed with her camera, clipboard, and a determination that could power a small generator, she documented every detail of Mike's operation. She photographed the water truck from 17 different angles, noting the company name, Aquafill Professional Pool Services, license plate number, and even the driver's approximate height and weight. But it was during her 3rd lap around the block, disguised in sunglasses and a floppy hat that made her look like a discount spy movie extra, that she discovered something that made her pulse race with vindication. The water truck's hose wasn't just filling Mike's pool, it was connected to a fire hydrant 2 blocks away. "I knew it," Karen shouted, causing Mrs. Patterson's elderly chihuahua to bark hysterically from behind a nearby fence. Karen's mind raced through the legal implications. Fire hydrants were for emergencies only. This was clearly unauthorized use of municipal infrastructure, which was practically municipal piracy. She immediately called the fire department. "Fire department, non-emergency line. This is Karen Whitmore, and I need to report unauthorized hydrant usage at the corner of Oak Street and Pine Avenue." "Ma'am, is there a fire emergency?" "No, but someone is stealing water directly from a fire hydrant for their swimming pool." The firefighter on duty, Captain Rodriguez, had actually dealt with Karen before during the infamous illegal fireworks investigation of 4th of July 2022, which turned out to be legal sparklers bought at the grocery store. His voice carried the weary patience of someone who'd explained basic concepts to difficult people before. "Ma'am, Aquafill has a city permit for hydrant usage. They pay for the water and the access fee. It's completely legal." Karen felt the conversation slipping away from her again. "But surely there are restrictions. They're licensed, bonded, and insured. The water is metered and paid for. Is there anything else I can help you with today?" After hanging up, Karen stood on the sidewalk, her floppy hat askew, and her clipboard clutched to her chest like armor. Normal people might have felt embarrassed. Normal people might have realized they'd made an error and quietly returned home. Karen Whitmore was not normal people. She was beginning to understand that Mike Henderson's operation was more sophisticated than she'd initially assumed. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment decision to fill his pool. This was a calculated assault on community resources, executed with the kind of legal precision that could only mean one thing: premeditation. Karen returned home and immediately began drafting what she titled Emergency Community Alert, Resource Misappropriation in Pinewood Estates. She planned to email it to every resident in the HOA database, along with a comprehensive photo gallery of Mike's water theft operation. But first, she needed more evidence. Real evidence. The kind of smoking gun documentation that would force the authorities to take action. She positioned herself at her kitchen window with her telephoto lens and began what she termed pattern analysis documentation. For the next 4 hours, Karen meticulously recorded every person who entered or left Mike's property. She noted that he received a pizza delivery at 12:15 p.m., obviously celebrating his successful theft, that his teenage daughter came home from school at 3:22 p.m., potentially an accomplice, and that he spent 47 minutes testing the pool's chemical levels, clearly savoring his victory. It was during this surveillance marathon that Karen made her second major discovery. Mike wasn't just filling his pool. He was using a pool heater that was undoubtedly consuming massive amounts of electricity. Karen's eyes gleamed as she reached for her phone to call the electric company. By evening, Karen had contacted 17 different municipal departments, 3 news stations, and the Better Business Bureau. Her dining room table looked like the headquarters of a major investigation, covered with printed emails, photographs, city ordinances, and a hand-drawn timeline of what she now referred to as the Henderson incident. Her husband Dave returned from his business trip to find Karen hunched over her laptop at 11 p.m., furiously typing an email to the city attorney's office. "Honey, I'm back. How was your Karen? What is all this?" Dave surveyed the chaos with the expression of a man who'd been married for 15 years and recognized the warning signs of his wife's latest crusade. There had been the great mailbox height controversy of 2021, the unauthorized bird feeder investigation, and who could forget her 3-month campaign against the Johnson family's aggressively loud wind chimes. "Dave, I've uncovered something big. Mike Henderson is running some kind of elaborate water theft operation, and I think it goes deeper than just the pool." Dave picked up one of Karen's surveillance photos, a blurry image of Mike's teenage daughter walking from the house to the pool. "Karen, this is a picture of a kid in a bathing suit. Look closer. She's carrying something." Dave squinted. "It looks like a pool net." "Exactly. They're already using the stolen water for recreational activities." Dave set down the photo and employed the careful tone he perfected over years of marriage. "Karen, did it occur to you that maybe Mike just hired a company to fill his pool? You know, like a normal person would do." Karen's laptop screen reflected in her glasses as she turned to face him. "Dave, I've done the math. The average residential pool holds 20,000 gallons of water. At current municipal rates, that's $80 worth of water. But Mike used a commercial service that accessed a fire hydrant with a city permit. The commercial rate is different, and there are infrastructure access fees, environmental impact considerations, and potential permit violations that I'm still researching. So, he paid more money to do it legally. It's not about the money, Dave. It's about the principle. Today it's pool water. Tomorrow it's, well, I don't know what it'll be, but it'll be something worse."